You may not realize it, but your rights are under assault. Not from Washington, but from the bureaucrats at the United Nations. In 1992, UN representatives from 178 nations signed a diabolical set of non-binding recommendations in Rio de Janeiro called Agenda 21. Inside this long, boring document is a plan to subvert American sovereignty and take away individual rights. According to Glenn Beck, this agreement would force people out of their homes and into high-rise housing, take away their cars, and tell them how many children they can have. Agenda 21 is so secretive that city planners and local government officials have often never even heard of it. Agenda 21 is so sneaky that 25 years after it was signed, none of the terrible things ascribed to it have happened. Sprawl like this is still a thing. Maybe UN operatives are waiting for the right time to ruin the lives of citizens across the world. Maybe tomorrow, maybe in another 25 years. Scary, right? I've been to community meetings where people actually believe this stuff. So I'm going to do 3 things in this video. First, I'm going to describe what Agenda 21 really is. 2, I'm going to describe smart growth, the planning concept that Agenda 21 promotes. And finally, I'm going to describe how smart growth got tangled up with conspiracy theories about climate change denial and one world government. So let's start with number 1, what Agenda 21 really is and what its goals are. Agenda 21 provides nations and their cities with a plan to combat overpopulation, resource depletion, pollution, and poverty. The principles outlined in Agenda 21 are voluntary and non-binding and merely a report issued after a United Nations summit on the environment. Signing onto the agreement as President George H.W. Bush did does not require the United States to do anything at all. Nobody in the UN can enforce Agenda 21. Presidents Bush, Clinton, Bush, and Obama have supported Agenda 21 goals through executive orders and executive branch commissions and offices, but there's been no congressional legislation on smart growth or Agenda 21. Implementing Agenda 21 at the local level has largely fallen on the ICLEI, an international organization that promotes sustainable development at the local level. Cities may become members, and the ICLEI provides those members with strategies and training guidance on sustainable development and reducing carbon emissions. Naturally, the ICLEI features prominently in Agenda 21 conspiracy theories, but the fact remains that cities may voluntarily join the organization and choose whether or not to take advantage of its resources and guidance. From top to bottom, implementing Agenda 21 is completely voluntary. Agenda 21 encourages cities to adopt policies that promote smart growth and sustainable development. Well, what does that mean exactly? There are plenty of definitions for smart growth, but the one I'm going to use is from a 2005 journal article, and it comes in 6 parts. Smart growth limits the outward extension of new development to make settlements more compact and preserve open spaces. This is typically done through policies like urban growth boundaries and greenbelts. Raises residential densities in both new growth areas and existing neighborhoods. This can be done via developer incentives for more density and policies allowing accessory dwelling units or granny flats in backyards. Provides for more mixed land uses and pedestrian-friendly layouts to minimize the use of cars on short trips. Cities can accomplish this by adding mixed-use zoning districts and applying them in areas to encourage new development that's walkable. Loads the public costs of new development onto its consumers via impact fees rather than having those costs paid by the community in general. Emphasizes public transit to reduce the use of private vehicles. This can be done by providing dedicated lanes for transit and encouraging densities that can support frequent transit service. And revitalizes older existing neighborhoods. This can be accomplished by encouraging infill development and the maintenance of historic structures and districts. If you were to ask your local city planner about these goals, they would probably tell you they're pretty reasonable. City planners have to plan for a future where more and more people are moving into cities and competing for finite and sometimes scarce resources like clean air, highway capacity, and available land. Smart growth lays out a blueprint for meeting the needs of current and future generations while protecting the natural environment. It's important to point out here that local governments do not have the ability to kick people out of their homes and move them into high-rise apartments, nor tell them how many children they can have. That's not what local governments can do, and that's not what smart growth is about. Now, what may sound reasonable to a city planner working on behalf of an entire community may sound terrible to someone predisposed to certain conspiracy theories. How did smart growth become so polarized? How can we have people disrupting and even ending local community meetings on the topic all across the United States? First of all, smart growth addresses our significant human contribution to global climate change. There are people out there that disregard the science and react negatively to any efforts to reduce carbon emissions and protect natural resources. Secondly, smart growth is promoted by the United Nations. Anything from the United Nations will raise red flags from a group of people who believe the goal of the United Nations is to dissolve national governments and become a one-world government. This type of conspiracy theory has been around since as long as the League of Nations and will probably continue as long as there is any sort of transnational organization. Third, the definition of smart growth is broad and somewhat fuzzy. An increase of density could mean adding a granny flat in a backyard, or it could mean building a high-rise apartment building. Conspiracy theorists have taken advantage of this ambiguity and painted smart growth as a dystopian rebuilding of American cities when it will never really come close. Fourth, it took a long time for smart growth principles to turn into buildings, revised codes, and implemented policies. Without concrete examples, the imaginations of conspiracy theorists went wild. Furthermore, conspiracy theorists in rural areas may not have much experience with cities at all. It can be very easy to vilify a distant other somewhere. Finally, while he did not concoct this conspiracy theory himself, Glenn Beck spread it and capitalized on it. He wrote a ridiculous novel about people being rounded up from their homes and forced to live and work in a futuristic urban hellscape. He published this while promoting the conspiracy theory on his television show. That negative publicity did not help smart growth's image. So that's the story of how smart growth got wrapped up in a crazy conspiracy theory about climate change denial in the United Nations. It seems kind of strange that a planning concept will be associated with so much drama and political strife. I hope that this video helped explain to you why smart growth is actually a useful concept and why so many people are afraid of it. Thanks for making it to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more videos like this, click on the subscribe button below. I try to make one well-researched video on city planning per month. I also love to hear from you. Give me a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or leave a comment. Thanks again.